stop scrolling, because what happened in this neighborhood wedding will make you question everything about justice, love, and prejudice. Imagine planning the happiest day of your life only to have it interrupted by flashing lights, angry shouts, and false accusations. But when the truth came out, it left an entire community speechless. Before we dive into this jaw-dropping story, hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell, because stories like this one will remind you why truth always wins in the end. The sun was bright over the small American town where lawns were trimmed. To perfection, fences lined the cul-de-sac in quiet symmetry, and yet beneath the peaceful exterior brewed a tension that many residents felt, but few dared to say out loud. When Denise Harper, a white middle-aged neighbor who prided herself on keeping the neighborhood in order, noticed unusual activity across the street, she instantly grew suspicious. For the Johnson family, a respectable black family who had lived there for more than 5 years, were setting up tents, floral arches, and banquet tables, clearly preparing for a wedding that had the entire block buzzing. But instead of joy, Denise's eyes narrowed with distrust, her mind leaping to the worst assumptions, whispering words like illegal gathering and breaking ordinances, as if love and celebration were crimes. And while cars lined the street, laughter echoed from the backyard, and music began to warm the air, Denise clutched her phone tightly, muttering about rules and law, until finally she dialed 911 and reported in an exaggerated voice that a rowdy and unpermitted event was being hosted by people who probably didn't belong, twisting her words to sound official, when in truth, she was motivated by prejudice more than policy. And as emergency lights began to flicker at the end of the street, guests unaware continued to clap and decorate, the bride nervously adjusting her gown inside, and the groom, unaware of the storm about to hit, adjusted his cufflinks with a calm smile, prepared to walk into the happiest day of his life. The moment the squad cars pulled up, the joyful chatter stumbled into silence, music faded mid-beat, and heads turned with a mix of confusion and fear. For the sight of uniformed officers stepping out with stern expressions sent a ripple of unease through the gathering. Elderly relatives shifted nervously in their chairs, children clutched their parents' hands, and the bride's eyes welled with tears as she whispered to her maid of honor, "Why are they here? We did everything right." But Denise, standing smugly at the edge of her porch with arms folded, watched like she had orchestrated a victory, certain that the police would dismantle the wedding she saw as an intrusion. Yet the officers themselves seemed uncertain, one of them scanning the paperwork handed by the wedding planner, confirming permits had been filed, noise ordinances respected, and every requirement met. But still the presence of their flashing lights cast a heavy shadow over the celebration, prompting whispers among the guests about racial profiling, about how quickly joy could be stolen by prejudice, and in the center of it all stood Marcus Johnson, the groom, tall, composed, yet visibly restraining his frustration, for he knew something no one else did, something he had chosen to keep private until the right moment. And as the officers debated among themselves, one began stepping toward him, requesting to speak with the homeowner, as though the sight of a black man in a suit wasn't enough proof of belonging. Marcus inhaled deeply, fighting the urge to lash out, instead deciding that when the time came, his revelation would not only silence Denise but also flip the entire narrative upside down in a way no one present would forget. The tension thickened when one officer, clearly influenced by Denise's dramatic statements, began questioning Marcus in front of his family, demanding proof that he had the right to host the wedding, asking about licenses, IDs, and ownership papers in a tone that dripped with suspicion rather than professionalism. And though the wedding planner quickly waved signed permits in the air, the officer hardly looked at them, focusing instead on Marcus, almost daring him to make a mistake. Yet Marcus's calm stare unnerved him, and when the bride's father rose angrily to defend his soon-to-be son-in-law, Denise chimed in loudly from her porch, declaring that she knew something illegal was happening, that she had seen too many strange cars, and that these people were not following the law. Her words slicing the atmosphere with poison, causing murmurs of outrage from the crowd, and just as the bride herself stepped forward, voice trembling but strong, insisting that this was their lawful wedding day, Marcus slowly raised a hand, asking everyone to let him speak, and in that pause, where all eyes locked on him, he reached into his jacket, pulled out a leather badge holder, flipped it open, and revealed the unmistakable star of a sheriff's deputy. His own rank etched in bold letters, the authority shining under the afternoon sun, and the collective gasp that followed was like a wave crashing through the street, the officers instantly stiffening, realizing they had been interrogating not a suspect, but a fellow law enforcer, one with more rank and credibility than some of them, the bride breaking into tears of relief, and Denise, face draining of color, stumbling backward, stuttering, suddenly aware that her attempt to disgrace this moment had backfired spectacularly, exposing her bias for the entire neighborhood to witness, while Marcus, voice steady but edged with quiet thunder, told the officers, "You were called here under false pretenses. This is not an illegal wedding. This is my family, my community, and today is my day to marry the woman I love. Now will you let us continue in peace?" When Marcus revealed his sheriff's badge, the entire street froze in stunned silence, the officers immediately shifting from suspicion to embarrassment, offering apologies as guests clapped in relief, while Denise stood pale and trembling on her porch, realizing her attempt to ruin the wedding had only exposed her prejudice to everyone. Marcus calmly reminded the crowd that love, respect, and truth would always shine brighter than hate, then turned to his bride with a smile, taking her hand as the ceremony resumed with even more joy than before, the applause echoing louder than the sirens had, sealing their vows not just as a couple but as a symbol that dignity could overcome discrimination. And though Denise quickly retreated indoors, the story of that day spread beyond the neighborhood, remembered not for her cruelty, but for the groom's courage, and the wedding that was nearly destroyed became one that nobody would ever forget.